What? It was So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my 5th week in the CodeCrew Coding Bootcamp program. And as always, I'm just going to run through kind of what we talked about, or the topics that we covered during the week, and then at the end just briefly talk about how I personally am doing, how I'm liking it, what I'm excited about, what I'm having some problems with, and things like that. So I'm going to pop up a little text box just to kind of keep track of the terms that I'm using and where I am in the video, and we are going to jump right in. So this week we were focusing on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all working together to create like dynamic, responsive web pages. It's really similar to what we did last week, except we brought in JavaScript basically, and near the end we brought in jQuery, and I really enjoyed this week. Clearly, I'm most excited about front end, so I'm interested to see. I think we start back end week after next, so I'm interested to see what that transition is going to be like. But for this week, we went over selectors, which is just how you bring an HTML element into a JavaScript file in order to like manipulate it, basically. We also talked about events, which are kind of like functions, basically. So on some event, something happens, usually. So maybe on a click of a button or an element or something, then the screen turns blue or something like that. We also had a review after those first two concepts because they were pretty like content heavy days, so we just kind of covered that to make sure everybody was caught up. And we'd also been working in Python pretty much all of last week, if you guys remembered, or all of week before last and a little bit of last week. So we did a little review so we could get back in the mindset of JavaScript and make sure that we were all on the same page, basically. And then after that, we moved into event listeners, which is just a way to apply multiple functions to one event, basically. So on a click, the screen turns blue and the text turns white, and things like that. These are really simple examples. Obviously, it can get a lot more complex and like useful than that, but that's the general, concept of it. Then we went over just some more basics. So we covered adding and removing attributes, which could be disabling a button or a text field, or hiding something. We also went over true and false flags inside of if statements, and that, depending on how you use it, it can allow you to basically like toggle a function, sort of, which is primarily how we were using it. We also went over prevent default, which just allows you to stop an action from happening, basically. So it records the action as having happened, but doesn't really execute anything from it. Or we did like a dummy text box thing, so no matter what you type in, it's gonna type out this like prescribed message. And so we would prevent the default log of your key down. So if you pressed A, then an A doesn't log. It's the first character of whatever message that we use. So that was a really fun exercise, actually, and how we learned to prevent default. And then we also went over set interval, which was really useful for timers and countdowns and things like that. So after our little basics day or day and a half, we went over multi-page, which was the best day. It was really easy, but it was really fun, and it allowed us to create web pages with more than one page. So we would link a page to another page, basically. And I'll pop in an image, actually, of the multi-page that I made. So we have a home page, a products page, a contact page, and a something else page, but essentially we created 3 or 4 unique pages and then linked them together so that it functions more like your standard, web page. And so just moving closer to like real tangible web pages that users are actually going to interact with. So going from like, little exercises just to get us to learn skills to larger exercises that are putting a lot of things together and making more complex and standard web pages was like the number one thing for me this week, as a good thing, as a fun thing. And then after we did multi-page, we moved into jQuery. We camped out on jQuery for 2 days, I think, and it's just a JavaScript library, I believe, but it allows us to use kind of a little bit of a different syntax and do different things with elements from our HTML file. So that was the end of this week. We finished up the jQuery, and one of our professors announced that next week we are going to have a long project. So to put it in perspective, every day we come in and we have a lecture, in-class practice, and classwork. And we usually have about half an hour for in-class practice and then an hour for classwork, and classwork is the graded portion. And then in the afternoon, we do it all over again. So we're doing 4 assignments every day, 2 of which are graded. And on the graded ones, we spend about an hour on each. And they usually have about 3 to 4 parts on them. So the least amount of time that we could potentially spend on a specific point in an assignment is 15 minutes, right? And sometimes it takes a whole hour to do one part because they're shorter and more complex. But just generally speaking, we spend about 15 minutes doing one thing on a multi-part assignment. Well, now we're moving into a project, which is going to be 4 days long, Tuesday through Friday. And we don't have any lectures those days. We don't have any in-class work. We don't have any classwork. We just come in and we do the project. And I'm so excited to move into something more complex. I remember last week I talked a little bit about waiting for all the pieces to fall together. And that's what Tuesday through Friday is going to look like. And then on Monday we're having 2 smaller projects. So they're just half the day. So again, we won't have any lecture, in-class work, or classwork. We'll just have a 3-hour project in the morning and then a 3-hour project in the afternoon. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to for next week. And I talked a little bit, or a lot of it, in the beginning of this series about how I was nervous about retaining all the information, especially as we were switching between languages. So I have to know Python and JavaScript, and then I also have to understand HTML and CSS and how those work together. So I think that bringing all that together for this project is a little daunting, but luckily pretty much all of this week we've been combining HTML, CSS, and JavaScript really seamlessly. And I can only assume that Python is not going to come into the mix, but if it does, I'm prepared, I have notes, our professors are going to be there for us to ask questions, so even still, I think it's going to be a really strong week. And I'm just really excited. I say that every single video, but I'm really excited to move into some harder material. The problem-solving aspect of coding has been the best thing about it to me, dealing with these puzzles every day. And so going from a 15-minute puzzle to a 4-day puzzle is a big jump, but it's a jump that I've been looking forward to. And as always, I'll keep you guys updated.